Okay. Kum Lenin Ablat Gemara. We are up to the Lamed Ahmed Aleph. Okay. Lamed Ahmed Aleph. I can also do the right thing from time to time. Okay, we're up to Lamed Ahmed Aleph. The last thing we're talking about was that you have to wash your hands after you take care of your personal bodily needs. So now the Gemara says you have to make sure there's no droplets left on you. Amar Papa, 4 lines on the top of the page. Papa says, "Soya b'mekayma." Let's say where you on your anus, you left over some soya. Also, likra krishma. You're not allowed to read krishma till you clean it up. Hey chidame, what are we talking about? Either nidis, if it's visible, then pshita. There's soya there. How can you say krishma? No, boss, either loinid is not visible. No, loinid to try to malachashadas. What can you do? Remember, especially in those days, they used to use rocks to clean themselves. And we're living more Shabbos there. You're allowed to set it aside before Shabbos. Very smooth rocks. We need in the case. The yoishev, the nidis. If he sat down, if he squat, nidis, it's visible. But if you're standing up, it sort of closes up. The nidis, it's not visible. And that's the question. What's it in that case? Says the Gemara, how is it any different than the case of having some excrement on your flesh? The Itmar, we learned. It with a flamin of an olive about 10 lines on top of the page. The Itmar we learned, we're talking about if you have some excrement left on the ring of your anus, is there a problem for davening if it's not totally clean? And we're talking about a case where if you sit, you squat, it's visible, but when you're standing, it's not visible. Is that an issue or not? Someone asked, why is it any different in the case? We learned, if you have some excrement on your flesh. Or let's say there was a wall there between you, intercepted you in the toilet, and then you put your hands right through that hole into the toilet. Abhuna says, Mutter likras krishma. Abhuna says you're allowed to read krishma. And Abchiza says also likras krishma. Abhuna says you're allowed to read krishma. And Abchiza says you're not allowed to read krishma. Abhuna says that kol hanashama, but Rashi explains it, kol hanashama tahalakah, mainly is tahalal is your mouth and your nose, and since they're in the other room, not the room of the bathroom, then you're allowed to say krishma. Abchiza says no, kol atzmoisai tamarna, that the entire flesh have to be involved, and therefore if your hands are inside the bathroom, you can't. But nobody's worried about the smell. The smell itself is not a concern. The concern is only whether you're in the same area where this tzoya is. So l'chayda, same over here. So therefore, in its place, there's a lot of there's terrible smell because there's nowhere to escape. But if it's in a different place, over there's talking about you're in one room and your hands are in another room. So according to everybody, fragrance. The smell is not an issue whatsoever because it's 2 different rooms. My question here is that you are in the same room as your tzoya. What happens then? When you're standing, it's not visible. When you're sitting, it is visible. Is it an issue or not? And that's the boya they had. Doesn't answer it. Tell them what we learned. One of the laws regarding a suda, if a person went out to urinate in the middle of the meal, when he comes back, let's say he only went to urinate, the hand that touched the actual droplets he has to wash, and the nichnas he goes back in. Again, because this is a discussion we had, if you don't touch anything, whether you even have to wash. And then when he walked back in, what happened? You went out to the bathroom to urinate, but then you met a friend and you talked for quite a while. Hifli is quite a while. Then you come back in, since you're probably that you wouldn't minding your hands to see whether it touches some any part of your body stomach. You have to wash again. You have to wash both hands. When you go in, but this time when you wash your hands, don't wash outside because no one knows what you did, and they'll be chayshed you the yechanis from teichshat. They'll be chayshed again. You see, the Gemara is so concerned what other people think of you. What you do is this is a procedure. You walk inside, you talk to somebody for a long time, even though you went out to urinate, you come back in, you sit down. Then you pick yourself up. Then you go wash your hands, and then you have the shamish and then you have the guy going around asking who needs to wash their hands. But he goes around with a jug with water. People needs to wash around their hands. And this is all, so everyone should be aware that he washed his hands. When do we say that you shouldn't wash outside, but wash, and you wash, go inside so everybody can see, is only when you had no intention of eating but drinking. So therefore, if you have no intention of drinking, people might think you didn't wash your hands. Now, if you only intend to drink, why do you have to wash your hands at all? We learned is a gasei ruach and all that. Why you need to wash your hands, and Rashi says here, is because you might turn around and eat something. The Rishonim have a whole different Gemara. This is learning more like Rashi. But if you intended to eat, then you don't have to go through this whole charade. You could go wash your hands outside, and then come back in. The made the yada. Everyone knows that everyone knows that if you're eating food and you went to the bathroom, you're going to wash your hands because people are clean, fastidious. Since I am unique, I feel a lishtais, even if I want to come and drink, and there's a possibility that I might change my mind and eat. Nami made the yod. Everyone knows I tell you that I'm a very clean person. So if I took some tea, they all know that I wash my hands. I don't have to go through these motions. Says Ein Adam Nichnas La Azara. One cannot enter the Azara La Avoida to do their Avoida. I feel it tired, even if you were tired. Actually, until you're tired. It says Ein Adam. Are we talking about only Kohanim, or we're talking about Israelim? But it says La Avoida. So Rashi right away says Lav Daf Kavoida. Nobody can go into the Azara without mikveh. Later on, Rashi says that Mahatoida only if you're doing Avoida. Midrabanan, anybody who goes in the Azara. Others, other than shame holders, only Kohanim for Avoida have to wash their hands. Go table themselves. You're not going to Avoida. You don't have to table yourself. Others hold. Anybody does. Different shittas. Now, Chomesh Trillas, the Kohen Gadol, we're going to learn later on, goes through 5 every time he changes his clothing from from the gold to the linen, from the linen back to the gold. He has to go to mikveh, and then Asada Kadosh, he washes his hands by the kiyah before he takes it off, and then after he puts on the new one. So every time the tefillah, he does 2 washings. And we'll see later on the husband why. And that day, the Kohen Gadol goes through this exercise 5 tefillahs and 10 times washing the hands. The Kulan, the Kodesh, we learned this before already, all of the tefillahs are done inside the base of English, and except that base of Parva, Chutz Mazu, except the very first one to enter, that he's doing that, also Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur, but like any other Kohen who has to go into the Avodah, and therefore they have to wash their hands. Yeah. Bilvad, Chutz Mazu, except this one alone. No, it's just part of 5. So number 1 is stamp going through your Veda, and then another 4 that's inside the base of Midrash. Porsu Sadin al Butz Beino the Beino. They used to make some kind of a mechitza, a temporal mechitza made out of linen between him and the rest of the people of Kohanim, so that he has his discretion. Okay, says the Gemara. Sha'alu has ben Zayma. They asked Zayma a question. Tvila Zulamba. Why does he have to go to the mikveh all the time, especially the first mikveh? What's the first of the going to mikveh the first time in the morning? What's that for? Amalahem, he said to them as follows. Why every Kohen who walks into the base of Midrash has to avoid it, has to table themselves? I understand the Yom Kippur, the avoid between the avoiders, but why every morning? Ma hameshanem make kodesh lekodesh. Somebody, this is how she learns, somebody who changes from one holy room. No, the avoiders, Kohen Gadol does some avoiders in the kodesh hakadoshim, some avoiders he does in kodesh and the heichel. They're both holy. And there's 2 places in the base of Mikdash that if a zar goes in there and does avodah, he's chayimisa, whether the kodesh hakadosh or whether the kodesh, and yet tones tefillah. And yet you're required to fill between one avodah and another avodah. We'll learn later on. So he comes in from his house in the morning to do avodah in the base of Mikdash, just from going from Choil to Kodesh, from his house to the base of Mikdash. And surely you should tell in tefillah. The Shem don't like Rashi Pshat because they say, what's the difference then between Kodesh LeKodesh and Mokum She'onush Kodesh? The same thing. It's repeating itself. So they learn that when it says Mekodesh LeKodesh, talking about the clothes. and Memokim is from that place. So you're changing from golden clothes to linen clothes go all Kodesh. And you're coming from home, you're wearing weekday clothes, mundane clothes, and you're changing it to Kodesh. So that's first part is the clothing you're wearing, and the second part is Memokim. Rashi learns the Hainu. It's not really two separate cases, one case. Abiyudah say, okay, so according to Rabbi Zaim, it's Mahatoida. This Kabbalah is Mahatoida, one of the 13 ways of darshaning. Comes along, Abiyudah says, Serach Tefillah Huzu. No, it's only Midrabanan. There's no chilul whatsoever to table. You know why it's table in the morning? The reason why it's table in the morning is because this will cause the kohen to remind himself 2 million Yeshana should be yodeh. What happens? He became tummy a few days ago. He forgot about it. But now that he goes to mikveh, he's more focused on tum and tara, and he'll remember if he was tummy or not tummy. If there's an old tum on him or not. And then he obviously, if he's an old tummy, he won't go to that zara that day because even go to mikveh, then you have to wait for Erev Shemesh. This is talking about the first activity, yeah, which is for everybody. The beginning Mishnah, ain't not he's only in the Rabban only a srach tefillah, so you can remember if you have other tumas on you. So you want my kabbalah apart from the rice of the Rabban, what else is not coming halacha? What happens? You went ahead, you proceeded to do your avodah. You didn't want to mikveh that morning. Did you desecrate your avodah? According to Ben Zayim, he didn't go to mikveh since it's Mahatoida, then you ruined your avodah. That means it's cancelled. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, and according to Rabbi Yehuda, the avodah is still good because the whole thing's rabban anyway, so the avodah is still good. You should have done it, but it's still all right. Says the Gemara, how can it be? Well, the Ben Zayim and Mimachal, you think anyone hold it because you have a mitzvah to go to mikveh? Does anyone hold that if you didn't go to mikveh, the avodah is bechul? But Tanya didn't we learn? Koyin gadol shalei tova, koyin gadol didn't go to mikveh, but like kiddush, koyin gadol. He didn't go to the mikveh, but like kiddush, and nor did he was he mekadosh as yadayim and aglayim. Bein beged lebeged between the different clothing that he wears. We're now talking about the koyin. Remember, the whole Kavachim of Ben Zayim was based on the koyin gadol. Mother the koyin gadol from clothes. Holy clothes to holy clothes. Holy place requires mikveh. Surely from mundane to holy you need mikveh. But the din by kohen gadol is on Yom Kippur if he did not go to the mikveh between clothing and clothing, or ben avodah lavodah. But doesn't shade it. But he have his kosher. And we have ruba kavachem daya love him in adin. You cannot be any stricter than where you're learning from. So by kohen gadol, if he proceeds to the avodah without going to mikveh, the avodah is still considered is acceptable. So how could it be that when you got to go to mikveh in the morning, it's not acceptable your avodah? It can't be. And whether you're kohen gadol or whether you're an ordinary kohen, so yeah, he would not make kaddish his hands. Not talking about tefillah. He didn't do the kir. If he didn't wash his hands and his feet, then so when is it possible? Only by kiddush yadayim by the mekir. But we'll see later the skill that was required to wash your hands and feet, either both hands at the same time, both feet, or both right hand, top of your right foot in one go, and left hand and left foot in one go. I will see later. But so by kiddush yadayim reglaim, that is ma'akiv. But when it comes to tefillah, it's not ma'akiv. If tefillah by kohen gadol is ma'akiv, it shows not ma'akiv by morning activity. So what's the nafkamin and halacha between Ben Zayim and Rabbi Yehuda? Ela lemekim ba'aseikim ifugid. Did you commit an issa deraisa or not? The Benay Zayim who learns the Kavachem from Kohen Gadol Kohen say you are over Nasei. He says a Kohen Gadol is over Benasei. It says the passage by Kohen Gadol Baruch has a psorai b'mayim, and then only should you get put on his clothing. It's Nasei, and you since we're the Kavachem there, you're also over Nasei. You're over Nasei in the Torah. And Rabbi Yehuda like Kohen say, Yehuda things are Rabban anyway, so there's no Nasei. Says the Gemara. Me, he said, you want to tell me the whole high swatter that what? You want to tell me the whole that every person has to go to the mikveh when he goes to do the avodah, or anybody who walks into the azara. Remember, just has to go to mikveh. But Tanya, we learned the following. Mitzayda, we learned in Raisa number 1. Mitzayda. A mitzayda. Well, this is Raisa number 2. A mitzayda toivel. A mitzayda goes to the mikveh. But Oymed, he stands. We learned a number of times that there was a special gate that was not holy. He stood there and he's put his thumbs through there so that they can put the oil on the thumb and the right toe. He stands on his 8th day. So the way it works is a kohen, a mitzvah goes to mikvah on the 7th day, and he has to shave his hair and everything else, and then he goes, and then he has to wait for head of shemesh. Then he has to go to mikvah tomorrow morning again, and that's when they do his kabbalas, because on the 7th day he's in mechutz kapurim. On the 8th day they do his kabbalas and they do the oil on his toe. and they put on it the blood of the carbon ashram. They put on it the oil, Shem Halag. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Ein tzarich tefillah." Rabbi Yehuda says the Mitzvah does not require to go to the mikveh the 8th day. Shekvar Tovam be'erev. In order for Mitzvah to proceed, you have to go to mikveh on the 7th day. So you already went to mikveh on the 7th day. So L'chayr always see from here, the 8th day is a new day, and he said you don't have to go to mikveh. And you said before, Yehuda holds me that you have to go to mikveh as well. Everybody has to go to the mikveh. So the Gemara, what are you talking about? What you ask the kasha from the Braisa? It says clearly why you don't have to. Ahu any time, but he said the reason. He says since you went to the mikveh, remember what have you to say? What's the whole reason why you have to go to the mikveh? To remind yourself if you were tummy. But if you went to the mikveh the 7th day, you would remind yourself last night already you were tummy or not. So what are we worried about? This person does not have to go to mikveh on the 8th day because the reason of Tumah Yishana doesn't apply. In fact, that's what you're going to answer the Kolam HaKarli. What were you thinking in the first place? What was your question from Bryson number 2 that Mitzvah doesn't have to go to mikveh? Of course, he doesn't go to mikveh. He went to mikveh the 7th day, and he Tumah Yishana. He knows already. Says the Gemara. He actually wanted to ask a different question. It says in the Braisa, Lishchas HaMetzoyin, there was a chamber specifically set aside for all those lepers. And why is it called Lishchas HaMetzoyin? Shesham Metzoyin, because that's where the Metzoyin go to the mikveh. Why? In order that they should be able to put their thumbs in. Rabbi Yehuda there says, not only Metzoyin go to the mikveh, every person. And that is our question. It seems to me they hold that you do need a tefillah mitzvah, and our question is exactly the opposite. Since he went to the mikveh on the 7th day, and you know the reason why you're going to mikveh, you tell him what Rabbi Yehuda is to remind himself if there's an old tumah. Since he went to the mikveh yesterday, why did Rabbi Yehuda say forget that the mitzvah do have to go to the mikveh on the 8th day? What for? Says the Gemara, like kasha. When Rabbi Yehuda says that they don't have to go to mikveh because he went to the mikveh, when the first price over here on top of the page is you went to the mikveh on the 7th day, there's no point in going to mikveh on the 8th day. But the second price that says that he had that mitzvah, mitzvah also has to go to mikveh, so he didn't go to mikveh on the 7th day, so he has to go to mikveh on the 8th day. I don't understand. He's like, if he don't make it the 7th day, then what's he doing in the 8th day with oil and blood? He said, because he has to wait for Harishemish. Boy, he shouldn't be doing this, standing there with his thumbs out. He has to, if this is the first time he's going to mikveh, then he has to wait for the following day before he goes in. And it seems from here that this is the 8th day. And he's already entitled to put his thumb through, which means he must have got to the mikveh the 7th day. So what's going on here? You're right. Both the Bryson number 1 on top of the page and the second Bryson both went to the mikveh. So how can the Bryson top of the page does not have to go to the mikveh again? Because we already did yesterday. Why the second Bryson you do? When the second Bryson says you have to go to mikveh again, it's talking about using Masiach Das from the fact that he wasn't watching himself, therefore he has to go again to the mikveh. And here, the top price, where Rabbi Yehuda says you don't have to go to mikveh, you were mindful the whole time that your hand shouldn't touch parts of your body they shouldn't touch, or you didn't, make sure you didn't touch the tummy, and therefore on the 8th day you don't have to go to mikveh again. If after the mikveh the 7th day he completely saved das, he wasn't mindful of what he was doing with his hand, could well be he touched him again. In fact, then in that case, hazos shlishi ushvi boys not sufficient just to go to the mikveh again. He has to spray himself, because how do you know he didn't walk into an oil of a mace and he wasn't thinking? If he wasn't mindful, he wasn't even thinking where he was walking. Who knows where he walked into? How do we know that? Said, if somebody has Masech Das, Tzorich Hazosh Lishi Ushvi. If you want to declare yourself Torah, you have to go through the sprinkling of the suffix tumah. So what's the chiluk? The first Bryce Rabbi Yehuda says Mitzvah does not have to go to mikveh, and you explain because he went to mikveh on the 7th day, and therefore any tumah yishana you're aware already. And the second Bryce says that he also went to mikveh on the 7th day, and he starts to go to mikveh again, repeat the mikveh on the 8th day. It depends when you went to the mikveh the 7th day what your intention is. When you went on the 7th day and you had in mind that this should also cover you for the following morning when you go to basic mikveh, then you don't have to repeat the tibul, and that's the first Rabbi Yehuda. The second Rabbi is talking about you had no intention, you weren't thinking about that this should be mighty, you're going to the mikveh the next day, and therefore you have to table again. That's answer number 1. Answer number 2. Tony, this is how you learn the Bryce. Not you learn the Bryce, and the second Bryce was not only you put the word only, not only Mitzvah, but also everybody else. No, it sounds like Mitzvah also has to go to mikveh. No, take out the word only. Loi Mitzvah don't have to go to mikveh because they went yesterday, and that's sufficient because to Mishana they did. Elakol only other people have to go to mikveh. Take out the word only, and then everything makes sense. There's no still between the two Bryces. Ravina says, Rabbi Yehuda is saying the Vrayim, the Rabbanon Kamalu. He's saying to the Rabbanon. Lididi, according to me, I hold him Mitzvah is not going to make it because he went to 7 days. So he's to me, Shana, he already knows. Lididi Mitzvah ain't so it doesn't feel. Oh, but according to you, ideally, Isa, why aren't you made me, you my beloved people? Me as, however, the loy Mitzvah in Bavadam el Koladim. That it's not only a din of Mitzvah that I hold that the only reason goes to me is Shana, and therefore Mitzvah was a mikveh for the 7th day, no point in the 8th day. And but to be made to me that Kol Adam as well do not require all people require mikveh. All people should go to mikveh because it's Tumi Shana. Maybe they have some old tumah. And these Rabban here, not the Rabban Amish, these Rabban here hold that people don't have to go to mikveh. But Rabban and Rabban say no, people don't have to go to mikveh. Only mitzvahs go to mikveh. So this is a third opinion. Rabban. Mitzvah died, but Mitzvah was tamei till now, and he was because he was tamei till now. He wasn't very careful, and he was touching all kinds of tumah. He wasn't at all mindful of anything. So therefore, even though when he goes to the mikveh and he's cleaner, we're still worried that maybe inadvertently he touched something tamei because the last 7 days he didn't care. So Mitzvah will be machman. We agree that the Mitzvah has to go to the mikveh. Or the koladom like the but some people are not tamei, and they'll remember if they had a previous tumah not. We hold not like Ben Zayman, that's not trader. We don't even hold like you that the Rabban you need because it's to me Shana, because most people, everybody would remember the tummy, and if they don't remember the tummy, they're taking tummy, and so on. Why don't we say in the very first Mishnah that says that the Mitzvah has to go and be and stand by the Sha'nikana? Let's say that the Rabbanon who argue in Rabbi Yehuda hold like Ben Zaymer, that's Mahatoida for everybody. No, is this Rabbanon of Ben Zaymer over here the same Rabbanon we had before, or this is a different Rabbanon altogether? They hold that everyone has to go to mikveh, they hold no one has to go to mikveh. The high dictani if the Rabbanon hold that that all people have to go to the mikveh, so why do they only talk about Mitzvah? Why do they only talk about Mitzvah? Because they want to teach you koich of Rabbi Yehuda. They want to teach you the koich of Rabbi Yehuda that even Mitzvah he holds only with the Rabbanon. They hold like Ben Zayma that a Mitzvah is Mahatoida and everybody's Mahatoida. Why are they only arguing in the case of a Ben Zayda? We're talking that the first brayz we on top of the page that a Mitzvah. The Tanna Kamma said that a Mitzvah has to stand in Shah Nikner, and usually don't need tefillah. I mean, the Tanna Kamma holds you do need tefillah. So this Tanna Kamma in the first brayz, is that the same shit as Ben Zayma, which holds that Mahatoida you have to go to the mikveh, and not only Mitzvah but every person. So how come they only argue about Mitzvah? To teach you Rabbi Yehuda's opinion that even a Mitzvah that is that's dying between anything else, he holds only midrabban. Is that what's going on over here? But I told him and they tell you Rabbi Yehuda, oh, he did shine or maybe no. Or maybe this Tanakam here is the same Tanakam at the bottom of the page that holds a kol adam don't go to mikveh at all. And they're only arguing by Mitzvah. And why by Mitzvah do they say that you have to go to the mikveh? Because da'ish betuma. And Rabbi Yehuda says no, because once you make the answer, you have to go to the mikveh again. So which one is it? Amalei, yeah. Amalei shiny Mitzvah the da'ish betuma. No, the Rabbanon here are only arguing on the case of Mitzvah. So this is a different Rabbanon altogether. It's not the Rabbanon we learned before, but this is not Rabbanon at the bottom of the page. Hold that this Rabbanon here. This Rabbanon here is exactly the same Rabbanon at the bottom of the page. It's not Ben Zayma. This Rabbanon holds that Kol Adam don't have to go to mikveh. The only ones that have to go to mikveh is a Mitzvah because Dai. But Tumah and Rabbi argues on that. He says because you went to the mikveh on the 7th day, you don't have to go again. But that's a question. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that says only the Rabbanon because you might have an old tumah on you. Let me ask you a question. So the whole thing is merely a reminder. Once you do something because of a reminder, do you have to go through all the minutiae? For example, you have a chatzitza, right? You're not yetzer tefillah. So this person over here is going to the mikveh only to remind himself, oh, was I tamei from once upon a time or not? The laws of chatzitza kick in, or we're just going through the motions. It doesn't really matter. Very interesting. Mishnah Berurah brings in Taflation involved when it comes to chinuch of children. Do we care about the minutiae? For example, does the lulav have to be the child's? Because by us, so by al chinuch, is it good enough just to give them a lulav and esek dalamidim? They're going through the motion, they're learning how to do it, and the dinim of all these the dinim that we have, maybe it doesn't matter. or not? That's exactly what Abai is asking over here. And they don't bring this they don't bring this Gemara here, which is interesting. It's exactly the most question here is. If we're doing something for another ulterior motive, does it really matter the minutia? It doesn't really matter, right? So the chayda, if he goes to the mikvah, reminds of his tummy, does it matter if it's a chatzitz or not? Omer Rabbi Rabbi Yosef. For chayda srach tefillah hizu, chaytzitz ain't a chaytzitz, is a chatzitz or not? Omer Rabbi Yosef answered, call the tikkun abana kain ra'isik. It doesn't matter why. Once we've instituted they have to go to mikveh, then the dinim of mikveh take over. So the chayda going back to chinuch, you would say that the same thing is by chinuch. That once we say that a child has to do the mitzvah because the mitzvah chinuch, then he has to do the mitzvah gnoi exactly the way it's meant to be. I'm talking wondering why the Pri Megadim and all those over there, no lachrein, nobody brings them this Gemara here. It seems to be exactly the same logic. Okay, get it right now somewhere. Okay. Okay, Rabbi said to Rabbi Yosef, another question. Bia b'mikzah shma bia. Let's say regarding this tefillah, what happens if you said anybody goes to Azora has to go to table? What happens only intends to put in a foot, not only a bia mixing, not intend to go walking entirely. They still in mikvah not. Answered behind the case of Mitzayda, we'll prove it. The Mitzayda stand the Shanikin, all he sticks in is his toe and his right thumb, and his earlobe. And yet Vitanya we learned Mitzayda that he has to go to the mikveh. Okay, we'll stop here and we'll continue tomorrow. Okay, have a good day, everybody.